Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Old Hunt, where we are still celebrating 10 years of Bloodborne. We are playing through version 1.00 of the Japanese release, and it's been a while. Well, maybe not for you, but it has been for me, right? I've went on a little bit of a vacation. I stocked up a bunch of episodes, so the releases should have been coming out in regular fashion. But for me, it's been about a month since I was able to sit down and record an episode in this playthrough. So, if I'm a little bit rusty, that'll be why. Also, if you see our character, we're now in full executioner cosplay mode. And because I've gotten the Gold Ardeo, and I've done some Chalice Dungeoneering, that was how I said I was going to do it. It's how I was able to obtain the Gold Ardeo. I went from level 92, I think I was, in the last episode that was released sort of on schedule. And I am now up to level 99, so I've gained 7 levels. And over the course of that, increasing of my abilities, I've gone up in Vitality. That's now up at 45, and I brought my Arcane up to 41. So that's sort of the path I'm on, very straightforward. I sort of run into a little bit of a set of dead ends in the chalices, because there's really only 2 chalices that I can explore right now in terms of their paths. One is the Ailing the Rand series of chalices, and the other is the Tumaru series of chalices. And in both of those, I've sort of run into some difficult bosses, and I'm waiting for a little bit more in-game progress to power me up, right? I'm still, I think, 1 bloodstone chunk shy of being able to get my saw spear up to +9, and that's going to be sort of, I hope, the key that I need to make some progress a little bit more easily through the chalices. We'll see how that goes. Sort of neither here nor there, because this isn't necessarily a playthrough that I need to finish all those chalice runs in, but it would be nice, especially because I'm going to be looking for gems for my, hopefully that I'm going to get my rifle spear that ends up being a little bit broken in terms of its ability. But we'll see how all of that comes together as I continue to play. But that's not the only thing that I need to catch you up on. So I thought, I normally start out these episodes by sort of talking things through in the Hunter's Dream, and going into a little bit of a lore dive on certain items and going through descriptions and things. Maybe since I'm coming back from a bit of a break, rather than do that, I would instead focus on things that I've gotten feedback from the viewers as I've been going through this playthrough. People have been bringing up various things in the comments. I think they've been making some very interesting and astute points, and I can't bring them all up necessarily, and some of them I think it's going to make sense. Some of these points I think will fit in a little bit better if I wait until specific points in the playthrough to talk about them. But I do think there are enough of these that I want to go back and address certain theories and certain ways of looking at this game that I've been neglecting. One of the most basic ones that I think people noticed, I even noticed it when I was editing the episode, the last one that just went live, I never figured out what was going on with the Ligarius wheel. And in part, that's to do with how it works. In another part, that's to do with I never noticed. This happened to me in the dream, and I just didn't pay any attention to it. But what happens when you spin the Ligarius wheel is, watch my health bar, and you'll see that it starts to go down, right? And it continuously depletes for a little while here. And eventually, after, I don't know exactly how much time it is, but eventually that health depletion will wear off, and the other effect that I'm getting will wear off as well. That's the other thing. See, I knew when I did that spin, it seemed weird that absolutely nothing would happen, right? So I thought, I need to look this up in between episodes. I did. And the thing that I learned was, it's not just the HP drain that I didn't notice. It's also, you're getting a shift in how this weapon's damage works, right? So you come in here and you look at, where's the weapons? Over here. And we'll go down. It's one of the few I have equipped, so that'll make it easier to find. Nope, I just want this one right here. And I brought this up before, right, where you can see that it's got a base damage of 160 physical and 37 arcane. Well, the way that damage works, you can sort of push and pull, right? You can make it move in one direction or the other, sort of, right? Because you can change the amount of arcane damage that this weapon focuses on. I don't think it necessarily gets reflected in the stat screen, but you can give it a little bit of a boost if you charge this charge, I say, as like conceptually, this Ligarius's wheel by sort of spinning it using that L2, right? So I was looking for a transformation of my like attack animations. The L2 thing doesn't change your attack animations. As you can see, we got the wheel there, and then, well, if you hit the wall will change your attack animations. But if you just do that, right, that's all you'll get. But what this does do is it increases the amount of damage that you get from your arcane. So it powers up the arcane side of the weapon as opposed to the physical strength-based side of the weapon. And you can also notice, like, I think the buff wore off, and what you could tell from that was, like, the ghosts got a little bit less vivid. Well, here's another thing that I can do. I can do it more than once. So if I, very quickly, I'm going to do it, I think the max is 4 times. 4 times in a row. Yeah, look at that. That is the maximum buff. Notice my HP is going down much faster. That is because I am much more powerful, right? And again, the animation hasn't changed. I wonder if this is going to kill me. That'd be really funny. Am I going to die? Let's find out. Yep. Look at that. This is one of the weapons that can kill you. Yeah, I've seen Let's Plays of people who play this game online. I always play these games offline. But I've seen Let's Plays of people who play these games online. And one of the things that you'll see when you do that is there are a bunch of people who have ghosts in the dream. And in order to leave a ghost behind, you need to die. And like, it's like, how are they dying in the dream? There are certain weapons. The Chikage is another one. This is like the Executioner version. It's kind of interesting that both the Vile Bloods and the Executioners, the opposed factions, each are associated with weapons that can kill you. Hadn't thought about that before. Anyway, this is a weapon. This is one of the reasons that you can find people's ghosts in the Hunter's Dream, where really there are no enemies that can hurt you. You know, at least not in the regular course of play. So that's one of the ways that you can do it. You can, like, super buff yourself using the Executioner's wheel, and it will very quickly, as you saw, start draining your HP. But the benefit that you get from that, particularly on a build that's got as much invested in Arcane as this build does, is it should significantly boost our damage. I'm going to be interested to test that in the real world. But anyway, that's all sort of me talking around things that I've neglected to say about the Ligarius wheel, but I brought all this up in the context of things that people have been leaving in terms of comments. And they haven't really been talking too much about the mechanics of Ligarius's wheel, except people, I think, noticed that it does deplete your HP, and I didn't call that out in the last episode. I didn't notice it. I saw it when I was editing. I didn't see it when I was playing the game, which is really not like the most observant I've been, right? Like, I think part of it was because I was in the Hunter's Dream, and I just think of myself as being safe in the Hunter's Dream. And obviously, I've never used this weapon before. I don't really know how it works. But now I've taken the time to look that up. But the thing that I think is interesting is I got a comment sort of mentioning that maybe we can conceive of this Ligarius's wheel as a little bit of a trap for the blood and therefore the souls of the Vile Bloods, which I think is interesting. Ties in pretty well with the idea of Martyr Ligarius as a blessed anchor, right? The idea that he doesn't necessarily have what it takes to utterly defeat Vile Blood Queen Annalise, right? Take her out of this world, but he can confine her, and in doing so, prevent her influence from spreading. It doesn't stop her from influencing us, but in theory, that's what Martyr Ligarius was probably going for. And interesting potential parallel there with the way that the blood of the Vile Blood sort of soaks into this weapon, transforms it sort of along the lines of the Executioner's gloves, like I was saying. You get blood that sort of adheres in this weapon. But, you know, watch, I'm going to retransform this thing. And that holy arcane nature, holy is maybe not the right word, but anyway, that sort of arcane nature, the power of those souls, right? We've sort of shut that away. It's only when, right, this is the weapon's true form, right, according to the description, right? It's wondrous true form, whatever that exact phrase is. And this is the one where we've got the sort of arcane spirits that were, like, drawing on their power to, like, give us strength. But as far as, like, everyday, like, usage is concerned, we've got it like this, and it's based on our strength, and we can do a bunch of damage like this as well. So we don't necessarily have to reveal. So a couple things here. First of all, we're getting another sort of reveal, sort of like we had the reveal of Alfred. You know, I wouldn't necessarily call his true nature wondrous, but in the eye of the beholder, I suppose. We get the sort of masquerade that he puts on for most of the game, where he's just like, yeah, I'm a normal hunter just like you, just a slightly different prey. And then you get the confrontation with him against, like, what he considers to be his prey. You get to see what he's actually like. And he's got this particular helmet on, where he had that off before. It's a way in which normally you would think of, like, you remove the helmet as the reveal. In his case, he's putting on the helmet as the reveal, right? And so you get this idea of the human connection is the facade, the, like, enclosing of the face, the, like, distant version of being behind that helmet, of being sort of, I guess, metaphorically blinded by the golden ardor of the golden Ardeo, right? Interesting symbology potentially going on there, right? Because he's revealing the fact that he's actually less potentially human and relatable than we might have thought. Anyway, we have this weapon. Look at that. It's the horrible spirits of the dead that have imbued it with power, right? It's not what it appears to be. It's not the simple weapon that it appears to be. And it might, in fact, have been deliberately designed to be something where it's got this aspect that's the power of blood, but it can be contained. It can be hidden away, right? Like, it's not there at all. Sort of like Martyr Ligarius serving as a blessed anchor. We're keeping the vile blood influence from the world when we have it in this form. I kind of think that's maybe giving the executioners too much credit, because I don't know how they could have found out about the, like, gloves of the family of executioners, which is the only other example in this game that I can think of that has this effect. It's another parallel, right? Because you have the life-draining weapons, and you also have the sort of built-up blood and therefore souls effect of the Ligarius wheel and the executioner's gloves. And I was talking about the irony in the last episode, I think, of how the Canehurst nobles used to laugh at the dances of the vengeful spirits and how they become those vengeful spirits to be used, right? That's another interesting thing. Also, I don't know how necessarily important this is, but the Ligarius wheel, like, because it drains our health, it doesn't require a direct infusion of blood like from the Quicksilver bullets, which the executioner's gloves, we have to spend blood bullets. We can't directly spend our life. We can spend our life to use the executioner's gloves. All we have to do is make blood bullets, right? And then we're spending our life to use executioner's gloves. On the other hand, Ligarius's wheel just eats up our life directly, right? We don't use the bullets to use this at all. And I think one of the comments was saying something to the effect that it doesn't have a resource cost. Well, it does have a resource cost. It costs your life. Your health is another resource. But it's interesting to think that it's sort of like, what is the manner in which, right? Because we know when the source is Quicksilver bullets, we know that we're giving the executioner's gloves blood in that sense, and it's discrete units, right? Whereas it's less clear, is it draining our blood? Like, are we continuously bleeding onto the wheel in order to create that arcane effect of Ligarius's wheel? What exactly is going on there? It's not very clear. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting set of things to think about in relation to the weapon that I've currently got equipped. Wanted to bring them up. I'm not entirely sure how well it fits in with everything, but it's fascinating to think about. So I wanted to bring that up to share with all of you. Also, speaking of Martyr Ligarius, I got a bunch of comments talking about how, first of all, Martyr Ligarius is gigantic. Also, Martyr Ligarius might be Tumerian, which, if you're relatively, like, new to the lore in this series, the Tumerians are the, quote-unquote superhuman, otherwise we might think of them as inhuman race of people who we find in the Chalice dungeons, right? And they tend to have this sort of weird, almost corpse-like appearance, right? Because, let me try and find the appropriate attire here. I'm looking for the Graveguard set, because that's the one where the particular look of the burlap sack is supposed to, yeah, here we go, right? It's to resemble the Watchers. The Watchers of the Labyrinth are the Tumerians, right? And so you can sort of see, right? You've got the very pale look. You've got prominent bones, right? And you've got these like sort of gaping holes for the eyes and the mouth. And that's sort of the look that gets associated with Pthumerians, this very mask-like appearance. And this is one of the things, like, the visual details of Bloodborne, I've said this before, and I'll probably end up saying it again, not my strong suit when it comes to analyzing this game. There are people, this is not necessarily related to the, like, most recent episodes that I've been putting out, but there have been a few people who've been commenting on the sort of lineage as it relates to Cainhurst and the Pthumerians, and potentially as it relates to the church servants and the church giants, the church-like versions of Frankenstein that I've talked about, maybe, that we can see out of the Chalice dungeons walking around, and they have notably Pthumerian features, and so maybe those are, like, creatures that the Healing Church found down in the underground labyrinth, right? I think this is all reasoning that other people in the lore community have brought up. I have no problems with it, but it's not really my area of expertise because I tend to focus a lot more on stuff that's written down in the text. Not that that's the only thing I focus on, but, you know, that's just where I feel more at home. So there is a whole line of connections to Pthumerians that is potentially very relevant to everything going on in this game, and notably, Martyr Ligarius, leader of this executioner squad, looks like a Pthumerian, and I'm not going to deny that. I think it's true. I don't know what to make of it. I've heard people say that it's sort of remnants of old storylines that have been cut up, and Cainhurst, therefore, is a little bit of a mess. It was sort of supposed to fit in the story one way, and then they only had so much material and so much time to make it fit into the story another way. I don't know how true that is. It seems like it's true. I've definitely, like I've said, in analyzing this game and playing it and thinking about it a lot, come across ways in which I think they've been reusing existing material, right? I did the whole thing where I talked about how I think they took out that whole, like, section of Gehrman from that one speech, and therefore it left them with a slightly different take in the English line read than you get from the Japanese subtitles when it comes to, like, you think now to betray me. There's sort of an aspect of the game that they pulled back on, and it sort of left its remnants in the game, and therefore isn't necessarily as clean as it could have been if they had, you know, had everything sorted out and then done the recording. But, so, like, I totally believe that these sorts of compromises had to be made, and there are certain things that do or don't end up making a lot of sense, but I don't know, it's kind of fun to think about the what-ifs and just engage with this, especially because, hey, like I said, this is the, you know, this is my version anyway of a 10-year celebration of Bloodborne, and I like thinking about things just from a whole variety of perspectives. I'm most at home, like I said, when I'm talking about implications of the text, but, you know, we can talk about the sort of strange nature of the development history. We can talk about weird aspects of fun little symbology, all these tiny details that could add up to a lot of things. And here's the other thing that I wanted to touch on, and this was something else that I got in the form of a comment, because I failed to note something about Master Willem. When you go and you find him, he's on the sort of moon viewing platform out by the lake, and I failed to bring up the fact that there are some, like, fungal growths, it looks like, coming up, like, off of his neck. And this is a relatively small detail, very easy to overlook, especially if you're me, because I totally overlooked it. But people have constructed some important theories out of that associate certain aspects of the game with plants. The plant association thing is something that's one of my weaknesses. Like, I talk about the Cainhurst stuff being, like, one of my weak points when it comes to this game and its lore. The plant associations with this game, another weak point of mine when it comes to this game and its lore. So, maybe, right? And what I get from the fungal growths is, it's been a long time, but other people get it in this state of becoming, and you can tie it in, potentially, with, I think it's called the Milkweed Rune. It comes in the DLC. And this is another thing, right? I'm playing version 1.00, and there are certain aspects of the DLC that come in and accentuate aspects of the game that aren't necessarily what you would have gotten from the base game by itself. And so that sort of changes things. How much was that the plan all along? How much is that new based off of continuing to evolve thoughts that the developers had? I don't know. It's difficult to say. And I feel differently about different story aspects of the way the DLC changes the story. But if you consider the milkweed rune as, relating to plants, then maybe you're seeing a whole through line through the game in that sense. And therefore, maybe you want to see Master Willem as being in the process of, becoming as a sort of milkweed thing, a sort of basis through which the phantasms can be channeled, and therefore actually succeeding in elevating his thoughts, even though when we talk to him, he doesn't have much to say to us. Maybe inside his brain, right, his communication faculties maybe have broken down, but inside his mind, he's thinking at a higher level than ever. Maybe. I don't know. Also, like, it's weird. What's the mechanism by which Rom is, hiding things? Is it to do with her vacuity, right? Rom, the vacuous spider, is the fact that Rom was short of high-level thoughts, but was able to sort of become some sort of great one or kin, right? Is the stupidity of Rom the veil, functioning as the veil that's holding people back from their own more insightful revelations of the world? And if so, what impact is that having on Master Willem? If we could defeat Rom and then talk to Master Willem, I guess you can do it in this order. I just didn't do it in this order in the playthrough, and it doesn't really do anything for you. But it could have been potentially interesting if you defeated Rom and then you talk to Master Willem and he's back to normal. That would have one set of implications for how this world works. That's not really what happens. So much for that idea. Again, just sort of having fun thinking about those sorts of things. But the main point I want to get to is that all these tiny little aspects of the game, all these fun little aspects of Bloodborne that are here, that are in the playthrough, right? I'm going to be missing stuff. And quite frankly, I'm a little bit worried about the stuff that I even want to cover. I don't know how much time I'm going to be able to have to cover it, how well I'm going to really be able to work it all into the playthrough, because we're really coming close to the end of the game. And I can only cover so much. So I guess if there's anything in particular that you're going to want me to call out in future episodes, let me know sooner rather than later so I can try and plan for it, because I can't promise anything, right? The main story, I think, the main through lines of the game, those will be pretty safe with, but anything that's even slightly optional, I don't know. I don't know how well I'll be able to cover it. But I just love how much there is in this game and how different people will latch on to different details and take them in different directions. This is some of the most fun things about Bloodborne to me. And this is one of the reasons why, to get back to something I said way towards the start of the series, I have a hard time confining Bloodborne to just being one thing, to just being this is the right answer to Bloodborne. I found it, right? I think one of the beauties of Bloodborne is the way that everyone is sort of able to come and bring their own versions of it to life through these various details that, whatever their, boring practical explanation may be, people can envision them in different ways. Okay, so I've got a series of notes here about these comments that I've been reading through. Let me just make sure that I'm not missing anything. Oh, okay, this was a very interesting thought. One last thing I want to say before I get back to actually moving on and making a little bit of progress in this episode. I've taken as long just going over this stuff, catching up, as I normally would reading through an item and then taking way too long to talk about it. So, I don't know. I feel like sort of this is back to my regular cadence. But anyway, there was an interesting comment, and I'm sorry, I'm probably going to get your name wrong here, but Martin Segedi 5039, I'll have the name up on the screen, so I'll have at least spelled it correctly, had a suggestion when I was talking about, it's this very strange point in the game where we defeat Rom, and we see this vision, because I don't know how else you could really describe it in terms of the in-game experience, right? If you're thinking about it all happening in-world, I guess this vision of Queen Yharnam and the Red Moon, and then we teleport halfway across the world and we're in a bath thing. If it's a bath, I don't know. I want to call it a bath. I said that before, but it might not be. And we're looking at the now open entrance to Yahar Ghul, and we get this message that shows up on the screen with no discernible source. What does that mean? Where does that come from? What's going on? And I was asking just those questions. And this person came in and said, well, maybe Queen Yharnam is sort of beseeching the moon, and this makes sense, right? If we haven't quite gotten there, but there is a being associated with the moon, and therefore also with us, that it would make sense for Queen Yharnam to be sort of making a request for. And that request would be tied with the baby, right? The nightmare newborn that we're being told to seek. And if we take that prayer essentially as having been answered, then maybe that could explain how we're then getting information, right? Because the creature that Queen Yharnam is praying to is tied to the moon. We're tied to the moon, possibly through it, and therefore it could potentially communicate with us. And I'm being a lot more vague than the original comment was. If you know what I'm talking about, if you know all the stuff that's going to come in the game, I think I've been clear enough to convey the idea. If you don't know, I'm going to try, now that I'm back from my break here, to be a little bit better about not, like, totally spoiling things if you're following along for the first time. That ship has probably long since sailed, but I'm going to try anyway and not give too many things away. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting idea. Relatively simple and straightforward, right? You have a request being made to something that's associated with us, and therefore we get a message sort of indirectly, and it lines up with what we're then tasked with for the rest of the game. Right now that the ritual concealment has been broken, we need to find the nightmare newborn, right? That's our next goal, and we get it in that manner. And I think if you're looking for an in-world explanation, that's probably about as good as you can do. I don't know if maybe you can do better, but I can't think of it. Certainly not simply, and again, I'm a little bit biased in favor of relatively simple ideas. I'm not entirely sure it makes sense, because why? Like, obviously the ritual concealment has been broken, right? If you're paying close attention to that, that makes more sense. That lines up more with notes that we've been reading, rather than, like, a communication from anything, right? So I think really the best explanation is it's just they needed a way to give you this direction in the game, and that was the only way they could think of to do it, and you're not going to miss it, right? I think it's very difficult to really come up with a fully satisfactory in-world explanation for that. But I think if you're going to do it, that's a good way to do it, that I was just outlining. Anyway, I've been, prattling on about all this for far too long. I want to test out, now that I know how the Ligarius wheel sort of actually works, I want to test out how well we can get it to work. And I'm going to do that by jumping back into the world. We're going to make a little bit of progress before this episode is over. All right, we are back in the world. We are making some actual progress this time through the game here. And now that I've dealt with those hunters, I was talking about this in the last episode, now that I've dealt with the trio that wait to attack you in this place over here, I can just run right past all those enemies and not worry about them at all. Let's see. Oh, look, they've been following me. Uh-oh. I forgot how ridiculously slow the Ligarius' wheel is as a weapon. I should maybe be doing some, like, damage testing on these enemies, but I don't particularly want to, so I'm not going to. Yeah, 250 per swing from an R1. I mean, that's not bad in terms of damage, especially considering this thing is only +6. I've been being conservative with my bloodstone chunks, because I kind of need to be, but there you go. We should be getting a bunch more now that we're here. Is my, no, my portable lantern is not on. Let's fix that. There we go. Get that going on. And let us continue to explore. We need to sort of re-explore the area that we found before, because it's different now. And as you saw, we've already picked up a treasure that we otherwise would not have gotten. That, we've been to this area, but there's new treasures in it. Interesting to think of how sort of time has progressed in this place. And speaking of time progressing, right, this enemy is clearly modeled. I want to not die to it, but I want to show it off. The challenge of doing things for lore. It's clearly modeled, if you look at its attack pattern and the way that it moves, its animations, the way it sounds, on the sort of werewolves that we've been fighting. Whew, boy. I don't want to die. Right? Look at those claw attacks, right? It's like I want to say like a bone version of the werewolf, but there's also some sinew on there, it looks like, some rotting meat, and it looks like a leg. Hold on. Let's try this one more time here. Yeah, that is definitely a human leg for a tail. Right? So this is maybe a Frankenstein sort of creature. Oh, it killed me. Well, it won't be hard to get back. Alright, well, I wasn't planning on dying, but the important thing is, right, you can sort of see how it's not just a skeletal version of those werewolves, right? I think they're called scourge beasts, if you're using, like, official, sort of common art book terminology. Those aren't skeletal scourge beasts, even though that's sort of what they look like. They're more like reconstituted scourge beasts. Reconstituted out of people. And this sort of gets back to something that we also discovered here when we were here for the first time. Alright, I do need 3 attacks to get them, or to defeat them at least in their buffed form. Right? And so, it gets back to the idea that we experienced the first time we came here, where there were all these people that we heard were brought to these cells, right? Okay, now I want to actually do a little bit of... All right, 230. Let's just turn this on without burning any of my HP. 273, is that real? 285. 285 is a little bit higher. That's okay. I think one of those two numbers will be real. Let's try you. So with a single spin, I'm now doing... Wait. I untransformed it. I want it to spin. There we go. Now, 422. So yeah, you can see the benefit of my 301. Either way, it's higher than 273, right? So you can see the benefit of my focusing on arcane. Just with a single spin, it's augmenting my damage a lot more because it's benefiting more from my really high arcane stat. But anyway, I seem incapable of completing this thought, right? Because you have the multiple people who were sort of brought here before, right? You had the kidnappers who were going around, the hunters in name only, right? We read their set description, and they've been going around and they've been kidnapping people on the night of the hunt. They kidnap you, right? They have, and I talked about the hunters in name only, but there's also the kidnapper enemies, right? That are sort of these grunts going around doing the work of the School of Mensis, right? Because this place here is associated with the School of Mensis. And it's all being done to sort of further their objectives. And we know that they've got this big ritual that's supposed to be taking place. And it's a little bit unclear. I was talking before, like earlier in this playthrough, it's a little bit unclear what's happening with those rituals. Like, and this particular kidnapper enemy, the one I was talking about that's not a hunter in name only, but is that like a regular enemy, has now been slain, right? So they seem to have outlived their usefulness. Also, not to me, I love these bloodstone chunks. I've been looking for some of these. But they've been defeated, right? They seemingly outlived their usefulness, right? I don't know what exactly the signal was. I don't know what the cause was, but they seem to be done. And we've got these sort of reanimated versions of people that are mimicking enemies. Maybe there was some transformation involved. Maybe there wasn't transformation involved in order to get those, like, weird conglomerate versions of Scourge Beasts. Oh, maybe what I should have done was defeat the enemy and then look at it, right? You've got this weird sort of ribcage look that a lot of FromSoft games have. But if I can, like, ragdoll you over... Maybe not? Let's see. There we go. So it does actually look like there is some sort of, some amount of transformation that happened just looking at those hands. But you can also see, right, you have, like, an arm in what looks like a coat. And you've got, over here, right, these aren't, like, fully transformed Scourge Beast limbs. They're maybe partially transformed, but they're also sort of human. And then if we can look at the tail, sort of that is currently, that's the thing that we could really see pretty well before, right there. The tail is just a human leg that is untransformed. So you have not just a mishmash of humans into this thing, you've got a mishmash of humans in what it seems to be various states of transformation into these things, and you're just crushing them all together in order to create these creatures that are facsimiles of other beasts that we've seen wandering this world. And that's an interesting bit of, like, visual foreshadowing. Like, I know I keep saying visuals aren't my forte, but that much at least I am aware of, and I think is very cool. So, there you go. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, and I forgot. I want to be comparing... Alright. 2 spins of the wheel. Wait, I didn't spin the wheel. I keep pressing L1 and thinking it's L2. Alright. There we go. That's 2 spins of the wheel. 380. That's not bad. I went from 270 to 300 and then to 316. Very difficult to get a good fix on these numbers. Also of note, right, remember the good old rally system? This, when it's taking off my HP, you could really see it when I had 4 of the buffs going at once. As it's sort of ticking through my HP, especially at the fast intervals, it's building up rally. So using this weapon, like, offensively almost right away has a practical benefit because you can rally back some of the health that you're losing. And that's probably a really good thing because based off of the speed and amount of time, right, the speed at which my health was depleting and the amount of time it was depleting for, being able to, like, attack enemies and therefore bolster your own dwindling HP is probably a welcome change. I don't think there's any new treasure out here. Okay. No new treasure out here. There probably is if I go up those stairs. Maybe that's what I want to do? Is it just going to be... I think it's just going to be repeated stuff if I come back in here. But, yeah. And of course, I may have mentioned this. I realize I'm getting more and more scatterbrained as I try and, talk and play at the same time. But the idea of the ritual, there's sort of some ambiguity as to what ritual is doing what, and which one is planned by whom. And obviously we'll get into that more as we continue to explore this place. And these enemies are terrifying. I want to show off that you can do something here. This thing here didn't used to be here. And the fire that burns on that particular pyre does do damage to this enemy. There we go. Right? I think it eventually wears out, but could you stop shooting at me? Drat, I ran straight into that. Well, I'll rally back a little bit of HP there and heal the rest. Oh, and I forgot. I was thinking, oh, the gunner's gone. Good riddance. Gunner is not gone. We're still in this version of the game. Right? So, what's going on with the bell ringers, right? We talked before about, oh, this was another thing I kind of wanted to mention, right? Because we have that moment where if you kill the bell ringers, the creatures that are being, like, empowered by them have that moment where they, like, stop and they grab their heads and they shake and they seem confused. Maybe if we're taking them as having been tied to the dream to bolster them, or maybe not the dream, but a dream or nightmare, maybe in severing that connection, they're losing their memories, right? They're forgetting what's happened to them while they were in that state that was associated with the nightmare or a bad dream. Not sure about that. But it's an interesting thought, so I thought I'd share it. There we go. I thought that was fun. And it does explain the sort of moment of disorientation. Of course, we don't necessarily need it. It could just be that they're disoriented. It's a disorienting thing to have happen to you. But the other thing to note, right, is like, what is this area training us to do, right? Like, and so to comment again, I'm all over the place today. I guess this is what happens when I come back after a long break, right? What's going on with the way that this area has been teaching us things work, right? You've got bell ringers that you want to prioritize, and you've got like weird conglomerations of people wandering around, and you want to concentrate on the bell ringers because they provide these buffs. However it works, right? Debatably, I don't know how strongly you can make this claim, right? How effectively you can say they're tying things to a dream or nightmare to bolster their powers, as opposed to summoning them in. Maybe they're being summoned from somewhere else. What's going on? Maybe, right, to go back to the idea of these rituals that might be happening. What's going on with the nature of these rituals? Are the, like, people that are being summoned here people who were rounded up before? And you heard those, right? Adela heard all those screams in the distance. Now maybe those people are being summoned back to be summoned. Perhaps in being summoned, they're being conglomerated into the weird versions of the scourge beasts that were wandering around. Were the people being sacrificed in order to form these weird sorts of pyres? Also, like, note the type of ground this is. This is the same sort of weird, like, mark on, like, soil that was underneath the bath that sort of was outside this place when we revealed the ritual secret. Is this sort of emanation of mist supposed to be the circular thing here? Supposed to have some ritual significance? Was this another sacrifice from earlier? Like, now they're burning through the lives of the people they kidnapped? What's going on here? This Yharnam, I've said it before, is sort of an impenetrable mystery in Bloodborne. And that's really not going to change today. But it is interesting to sort of consider all the things that are being set up. And once again, we have these things, I think they're called cramped caskets, which, obviously, it's a bunch of, like, corpses stitched together that are all coming out of this box, right? And maybe, again, this has something to do with the ritual or rituals that were going on in secret, all the while that we were running around the first part of Yharnam in particular, right? Oh, keep those bloodstone chunks coming. Love it, right? Maybe that's got something to do. This is a trap for sure. Yep, there it is. Ha! I didn't fall for it. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. The trap was worse than I thought. Get me out of here. Oh, I can't run. No. Back to the fire. One of you get burned, please. Yeah, okay. It burned, but it did not die. Now the fire is gone. I think it's cool the way the flames, like, that particular sort of weird arcane fire lingers on the enemies, even after it's not on the corpse. Sort of ties in with how the fire did linger on the corpse. Gives it this whole extra, like, weird feel. Oh, that is potentially a good gem drop. I don't know if I've gotten one of those before. I don't know. Anyway, now that we've survived that trap, what was I talking about? I was talking about the way, oh yeah, the way that you can sort of build the, like, gameplay expectations out of all of this. Now, I wonder... Alright, this is super risky. I'm doing 4 spins of the wheel. What's going to happen? Alright. 379 damage off of a single strike. Alright, you're dead. No! No! Alright, it's no longer draining my health like crazy. Their attacks are draining my health like crazy. Of course. I knew it was a dangerous thing for me to be doing. Boy, all the way back here. That's annoying. But I no longer have to explore. I'm going, by the way. I want to sort of, oops. I was hoping I would land on the earlier ledge. That's okay. I'll still get through it. So long, everybody. I've been hoping to get through the sort of portion of Yharnam here that we've seen before. Right, that is no longer a mystery to us. Or, well, that would otherwise not be a mystery to us. And then sort of call it at that point. Alright, maybe I want to do a little bit more, like, regiment... Oh, dang it. I forgot about the gunners. Regimented experimentation here. Nope, not the button I wanted. What was that again? 272? That seemed pretty consistent. So... Great. I'm having the same problem I had before, which is I just want to test how much damage I can do here. And the real problem is how much damage the enemy can do. Okay, so maximum boost. 379. It's like 100 damage more? It hurts, though. It really hurts. Also, I need to defeat the bell ringer in order to actually defeat you, Gunner. I know what's really going on here. Uh-oh. But yeah, I think they're giving you some, like, gameplay building blocks with all of these, like, things that they're putting in front of you, and that's pretty interesting. I think I've probably finished that thought before, but dang it, I thought I would be too close. But it's definitely something I wanted to mention because I want to revisit the thought later on. Alright, now, is this like an actual item, or is this... No, okay, this is Quicksilver bullets I can't pick up. I can't pick them up because I've been, like, focused on the things I've been doing in the chalices, by the way. Okay, I thought I'd come up here and maybe gain an... You know what? Let's try the Executioner's Gloves, shall we? They're not as effective in this version of the game, but they're not bad, I'm sure. Particularly when the enemies can't really hit you. Ooh, I like when I can actually get 3 ghosts to connect. That's pretty nice. I've been burning through Quicksilver bullets, but that's okay. Sort of got those maxed out anyway. Hello there. Look at that. Look at that. I like being able to hit with all 3 good... Look, 500 and whatever versus 172. Makes a big difference when you can get all 3 ghosts to connect. And that's sort of the thing about this version of the Executioner's Gloves. They're just a little bit harder to get all of those ghosts to connect. However, they were the answer I needed to this particular question. Or rather, this particular problem. Okay. And I did all that just to realize there's nothing new for me to pick up back here. Oh well. Now, there is still the enemy inside that thing, but I don't think I'm going to worry too much about it. I don't think it's really going to be a huge problem here. Now, I have a choice. I can sort of go down into this area, or I could go over into this one. And I think I want to go over this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to defeat the enemies, and I don't think I think I actually forgot to come back into this area before. Ha! Oh, I actually was too close for that one. Cool. Aw. I hit the dodge button. It's just too late. Okay. Right. I was saying, I think I failed to show off the first time I came here that there is an elevator. I thought it was there. Somewhere around here. There is an elevator around here that you can take. Oh, and I need Quicksilver bullets now, so don't mind if I do. I failed to show it off the first time, but even if I'd come here and shown off this elevator the first time, it wouldn't have been working. So it wouldn't matter. But I'll show it off now, and I'll run around behind it just because. Okay, just wanted to check to make sure. This, I think, is where I will pick things up next time. We'll be taking this elevator up, doing a little bit more exploration of Yharnam, and hopefully not wasting quite so much time at the start of the episode, if you consider that a waste. I don't know. I don't even know anymore. But it's been fun. It's been great to be back, to be playing Bloodborne again, and to be like sort of closer to real time, where I can a little bit more effectively going forward respond to your comments. Should be an interesting way to close out this series as we approach the end of the game and the end of my personal 10-year celebration of Bloodborne. But it's not over yet. And if you're still going with your version of whatever 10-year celebration you're doing, then great. I wish you all the best. I'm going to call an end to my hunt for the evening, but as always, I wish all of you good hunting.